Welcome back, guys. Audrey's Garage. And I got this one in a while back. A nice machine, 13 horsepower. Let's get it cleaned up. I'll give you the backstory on that in a little bit. It's one of the reasons why I take everything off. It's a nice machine. You know, I want it. I have one. I've often thought about, do I get rid of my Jacobson and keep this? You know, because this is a nice machine too. Everything's clean now. Right, we pretty much got in there. All these cooling fins were packed. You can't leave it like that. It'll overheat the motor. If the motor's still good, we don't know. And I'll tell you a little bit more about it when we get it in to the shop. We're going to bring it down and bring it in the shop now. Okay. Looks real good underneath here. See if I can give you a bit of a shot. It's a nice blade. It's a nicer blade than mine. Can you steal it? I don't know. I don't know. It might be the same blade that's on the other one, so we could swap that one. The other one's more of a parts machine, but the other one might be good too. I'll just give you a quick shot of that one. Hey. Some tires are flat. It's probably getting water in it. Gotta get all that out. We gotta get this one set up. I know the bike's in the way, but this one's nice too, in its own way. You know. All right, we'll see. Next.
The next day.
It's the next day, and now I can go over a little bit with you and what's going on with it. We've got some of it apart so that we can get at it, and I'll give you the history. The 13 horsepower overhead valve Tecumseh engine. It's a 30-inch cut. Overall, I have one tire that is maybe a little leaky. The other one looks like somebody put some kind of special sauce in it. It's got some kind of blue goo coming out of it. One of the tires here also was a little bit low. I think it was this one, but we'll know. We'll find out. And so now here's the backstory. My buddy Mike,
What do you think?
picked this up for me. The guy said it needed a push rod. Red flag! When he brought it here, what I found was, for whatever he tried to replace, I don't know or why, but he was in here. And he had tightened down the valves adjusters all the way, as if they were just bolts and studs and the nuts. And Mike said, it doesn't have any compression, John. So he said he checked it. And so with Mike here, I tried to show Mike a little something. So I loosened up the valves and loosened up the adjusters pretty much all the way. And I kind of peeked around and I took one of the studs off, the push rods off. But then we spun it around a little bit just by hand, and you have some compression. Okay, you know, so that's one of the tests, by the way. If you think you have a bent valve and you're really not sure, take the rockers off and spin it. You should have some compression. And if you don't, you got a bent valve or a broken seat or something else. I apologize for the noise. It's in the 90s, and I have to keep some kind of fans going in here. And I'm a little flustered from it because it's just every day, you know. So you guys know. All right, I'll be back in a bit, and we'll take a look inside.
5 minutes later.
I took the cover off, and you can see there's a little bit of junk in it. This is the rocker stud. And I got the push rod in. And why would it eat a push rod? Now let's just do a cursory check. I'm gonna watch this event. I loosened this up enough, plenty of room here, right? So it's just here to, you know, I loosened them up for testing when I was in here that day with Mike. So now we're just gonna watch this rocker, and I'm gonna put my finger on this. I just wanna see if it's actuating. Yeah, okay, it is. It's moving, right? So this rocker's moving, and I feel under my thumb, I feel the push rod moving. Okay. And we want to... Oh, there it comes. All right, let's wait for it to go down. Okay. All right, now let me put the rocker back on with the stud, and then we'll adjust it 5 and 8, tight 5 and 8, which is more like a 4 and 7. Now on these, just want you to look at the way it sets up. This is where the push rod goes. So on these, the stud is the adjustment. Stud goes in and out. And then, so you're adjusting from here, and then you lock it down with this. So to put it in, we're going to thread that nut all the way to the back. All right, we're going to put our lock washer on, and we're going to start bringing it in until we get it, you know, kind of where we need it. And then we'll walk that lock nut back. Now we got to bring it up to TDC, and I'll go over that with you in a minute. But let's just get it close. So we had to thread that nut really all the way up to the top. This feels like it's half inch, and it's not so easy to get that in there. So I want to check to see, it should, maybe it's metric. Put a little bit of this in first. All right, now, what size is it? Well, it's not 12. Yeah, it's like a half an inch. That's a 13. You know, even that doesn't really. That's a 13. Yeah, basically the same. It's not 12. It's sloppy. Let's just see if we can figure out the valve events. Now, we have up here, all right, the armature. All right, so the electronic ignition. So we're going to watch the magnet come around. We're going to watch the valve events. Now the exhaust. It feels a little stuck. Yeah. Wow. Uh-oh. You hear that? What the hell is that? So, something not right. Back it up. Now, there's some lash there. Okay, here it goes down. I feel a little bit of... Alright, now it's moving. Alright, so now we've had exhaust. Alright, now we got intake happening. There goes intake. Now we're going to come up to fire. We're going to follow that magnet. See how it relaxed? You're going to get a little bit of an exhaust bump. And there we go. So, something's not right. Okay, because it should be coming up to fire. And we shouldn't be, that exhaust pump should be at another point. So I'm thinking that something's wrong with the camshaft. That compression pump shouldn't be there. See, that's tight. And I'm feeling this little, like it's hitting something. Something don't feel right here. We're going to set the lash here. Now, generally you don't throw flywheel keys. Generally don't do that. So we could see if we could fire it, but something's not right. So let's just put our feeler gauge on that. So here's an 8 thousandths. Okay, it's a little bit much. Let's back it off a little. There we go, right here. Let me tighten up the stud. And we're going to spin this thing over and watch it. Well, maybe the can slipped. Okay, that's good. We don't need to make it perfect because we just want to make it so that it's somewhat adjusted. That's good. And that's too big. Set that one to 8 as well while we're here. Just leave them at 8. Give a little extra clearance while we're doing this. There we go. Okay. Here. I'm just going to rock it back and forth. Watch this rocker. The problem one. What the hell's going on? You know, you're opening a valve while you're going to fire. You know, I mean, the valve is closed, and now the rocker is moving. My magnet is way over here. And I don't know if you can see that, but now that magnet is coming up. And that's not a compression pump. Right there, you're going to put a compression pump? I don't know. That doesn't make sense. All right, let's get the ignition system hooked up. All right, let's just kind of watch the valve events a little bit. Let's exercise the motor a little. I'm going to hook up my button so I can stand here and watch. All right, so my button on this machine, and most of these solenoids are the same. You can even use an automotive solenoid. So I'm pulling positive power over to that terminal there. All right, and you can see my button. Okay, well, let's go watch it. Well, we just got shot. All right, so now the valves are all the way up. Well, that one's got some good clearance. That one's got some. Let's just check it again. You set them to 8. Yeah, that's 8. That's a little more than 8. All right, plugs up over here. You're probably not going to see the spark because it's bright out. Yep, we got spark. All right, now while I'm doing this, I'm going to put a little oil on that starter so it'll work its way in. Get a little oil on it. We'll put a little grease on later. But let's just try to. All right. All right, let's set up for a compression test now. I'll call it out, but you'll see the gauge move or not. A lot of junk coming out of the exhaust, a lot of water. So we got about 55, 65 pounds. It's not a lot, right? That's not a lot, but she might wake up more. It's enough to run it. Let's take this back out. I'm going to put a little more magic juice in there and crank it over a little bit. Because with the compression gauge on, it's forcing whatever water or junk through the motor and back out again. And then we'll put a little oil in too. So my 2-stroke with the tranny fluid, or even if it's just gas with tranny fluid. Okay, it's the same. So we've blown out what we need to blow out. I don't hear anything weird. Let's just crank it, blow out whatever junk comes out, and listen. All right, I don't hear anything. Let's get those valves set. We are in intake mode here. So let's pull it around. There we're closing intake. Somewhere right here, and you can see where the magnet is. So we're going to go with that. Now we could take a peek in there. We're going to take this top off and maybe we can see if it threw a key. But we're going to start here. Let me adjust the valves. All right, so let's go. Just check the exhaust one more time. All right, that's about 8. Yeah, that's a good 8. Here's our 5. Here's our 5. Okay, it's close. All right, that's pretty close. Let's tighten it down, check. It should be good. That feels nice. Now, I'm going to wash off the cover, and let's put a little 2-stroke in, with tranny fluid. Get it all over that. And we'll put a couple of drops of oil. Let's crank it over a little. Get those valve stems lubricated. Oil on it, and a little bit there, a little bit on the stem itself. Okay, and now we can close it up. We clean the rocker cover off, close it up, and we'll get to the next step. Cross your fingers. All right, now we can get a good reading on that. That's why I polish them. Let's take this off. I want to clean it, and then we'll remount it and get it lubed up and clean, and we'll gap it. Yeah, it's pretty naggy and chunky. me get that cleaned up. You want to get the studs cleaned off because you want to make a good contact, good ground. It's nice and clean. This is loose. Okay, so we're just going to hold the 10,000 feeler gauge, bring it around until it sucks in into the magnet, and just try to get it to the corners, you know, everything. There we go. That'll work. All right, push it down, hold it in place. And just tighten it up by hand, guys. I put good lubricant on these bolts, and that's it. All right, let me tighten it up with my 1/4 inch drive, and we'll move to the next step. I want to get a peek at that flywheel nut. It looks like it's correct. You know, and like I said, it wouldn't just spin. All right, we'll put a little lube on it, we'll shut it, close it, and get back to the next step. Okay, I'm about to take the carb off because we want to get in there and clean it and check the gas and all that. So we want to just point out, right, this is the throttle linkage, comes to here, the rear. So furthest point to furthest point, and choke goes to here. All right, now let's get it apart and see what we got. I just want to drop the bowl because it's too difficult to try to get everything else off. But let's start off with the bowl, because I don't like doing it this way. It'll piss all over. And the verdict is, ugh. Yeah, we may have to take this carb off. Yeah. Well, I'd say so, because that's going to be all up in there. So it's unlikely it just settled. The best way to take the carb off is here, and here. Maybe you can get it here if I can get this bolt loose. That's what I'm going to find out next. But I can't. So far, I can't. Let's get this cleaned up. Yeah, there's junk in there. We got to clean that tank out probably. All right, I'm going to wash this down. We'll start off like this, just brushing it. And then we'll spritz stuff in there and run it through with our ram rods. Okay. It's pretty naggy. We gotta get this cleaned up a little bit more. Let's soak in a little bit of lacquer thinner first. And that goo is in there. It's all nice and clean. There's this little hole. Just make sure that's clear. And I'm going to look at it closer. It's small. 0.16, so 0.016, 16 thousandths. Make sure it's blowed out. It's a little bigger than that, but it's clean. I don't want to open it up. I don't want to cause any problems. But, you know, get something in there and without opening it. All right, this is done. I'm just going to clean up and put the rest of it together. That looks good. It's all stabbed and blowed out. Some pitting on it. All right, we'll put it together and we'll put it back on. I got to make a gasket. All right, I just want to show you. I made the gasket, and so the outline is done and the holes are in the right spot. But to get the inside, just holding it there with the screws, and we're just going to tap lightly just to create that line that we need. And it'll actually cut it, but you don't have to cut it. come back and cut it. Now, if you wet it a little bit, you can wet it with like lacquer thinner because it dries quick. But yeah, you don't have to cut it all the way, but you'll see it actually will cut it. And then just light taps with a ball peen hammer. Alright, let's mount the carburetor now. Everything that I put back together again, I use some type of anti-seize or oil. Just always is a matter of practice and procedure. See? And we'll just pull that off. I got to get the rest of the gasket off, so let me go do that. And then we'll be back and I'll mount the carburetor. And we'll be able to test this very shortly. That's really what these cookies are for.
You're absolutely. I think this round's different than ours. I mean, they're just beyond us. They're around us.
Golden. That's what I took out of the tank. I lowered it back down so I could evacuate the tank, and it's easy to connect the hose to the carburetor, and while you're putting it on, you can't really get to it otherwise. So I said, well, let me do it this way. There's junk in the filter too. You can see some of the junk in the filter. We want to get that out. Also, notice the way the clamps are put. All right, especially up there. I mean, they're not where they should be. In fact, this one's doing nothing. All right, let's take a look at that and replace it. I got one of these. These are good. These are fine. All right. Let's see what's in here. That looks nasty, huh? Odd. It's like a... Doesn't smell bad. It's enough to need some, but it's enough to start it. If it'll start. Alright, let's find out. The linkages are a little messed up. I just tweaked them by hand a little. So I see that they're working a little bit better, but we can only tell when it's working, you know, when the engine's running. So choke's on, and we'll turn ignition on. We're going to see if it'll just start on its own. So I'm going to press the trigger over here, and we'll see what it does. That all about. So it was running. Let's bring it back up to choke. Pissed all over my chair. Okay, so that sounds a little lean. And she's got a lot of water in it. We're going to try just to keep running it. We'll turn out the idle jet a little bit more to see if I can get a little bit more fuel to it somehow. A little less throttle angle. Let me pull this out. A little bit. You know, she's cranky. Might want to check the valves again after it runs a little bit. Definitely. Okay, so that's a fuel issue right there. You know, it seems like it has fuel in it. It's like it's almost running out of fuel. Yeah, we want to get it to run a little bit more. It seems like it's running better. We also may want to check the float. Pull the carb back off and check the float again. Let's try it again, and we're going to bring it down to an idle. You know, more of an idle now. We'll try to see if we can maybe tune it if it continues to run. Okay. Yeah, something's not right. We're going to have to look into the fuel system. It's idling well. It's adjusted enough for now. I hear a little clatter. So now that it's run and it got hot, I think what I'll do is tomorrow we'll pull the oil out. That's enough for tonight. It's so hot outside. So I think we did good so far. All right, guys, we'll be back and we'll play with it a little bit more and iron this thing out.
Tomorrow for sure.
This is that chocolate color that we all talk about. You know, it's beautiful. I took the plug out so I could just check the valves one last time, and it's running really good. Right, and you can see it there. All I'm going to do right now is just check the valves, just to make sure. I got a 7 thousandths on here. So as I just turned it over until we're going to look at the exhaust, and I'm just kind of so the intake is just being actuated a little bit, just to make sure I'm as close to the base circle as possible. This is a 7 thousandth, and it just about is perfect. So I'm going to tighten that down a little bit, and I'm going to check this one as well, and then close it up, put the plug back in, and we're going to put the rest of it back on. Right? So far, so good.
A few moments later.
That's a little better, right? And just remember to dull the edge a little bit because it's hardened steel. It'll chip. But it's getting hot just being in the sun for a minute. It's ready to receive the precious dyno juice. I usually start off with, this motor I'll start off with 20 ounces because most engines take 20. So I don't want to start off with any more than that. And we'll figure out what goes in here. See if it needs any more. The old oil was not too bad. It smelled older. I'll let that settle and I'll check it. I went over the valves and I tightened the one up. I think it was the top one. That is intake. We made that originally like 8 thousandths, so I got it down to a nice tight 5. And it was probably a little bigger than 8. So I checked it in a few different spots just to make sure. Trying to get to the base circle of the cam isn't so easy on this motor. I also want to mention the question regarding the valve events versus the ignition timing. The best I can figure is that there is no compression bump. You're not pulling it. That's mostly designed for lawnmowers where you're pulling on the cord. What this is more likely it is valve overlap. And you can look up that definition, but briefly, it's a kind of a way of turbocharging the engine, developing a little bit more power out of it. You kind of crack open the exhaust valve, and what it does is that flow pulls out some of the extra spent, the spent gases from the last combustion cycle, and kind of helps to pull in a little bit fresher charge and pack the cylinder a little bit more. It'll drop the compression, but you'll get a better charge. And then when you ignite it, because it's a sweeter charge, it's got a little bit more air and fuel in it, and it doesn't have all those sort of burnt gases which will just get in the way. So you get a better, more cleaner burn, but you have to put a lot of ignition lead on it in order to do that. So that's timing. So that's why we're seeing the magnets really well before, many degrees before top dead center. That would be my best explanation on that, and you can kind of look into that. I'm giving you a simpler view of it. I want to drill out the jet a little bit. So on this model of the Cummy, it's this one over here, which is, this is what went in is 026. I'm going to put in 028. Kind of fits. It's sputtering, and it feels like, and it seems like run out of fuel. And then you try to run it on choke, and it kind of runs on choke, and so something's not right. And also, I felt like the float wasn't set quite right, so I just kind of pressed on it, pushed it up in there, and took some of the adjustment out. Let it lay a little flatter. Well, let's do this. Make sure this is reamed in. 028 is about where I want to be right now. All right, let me blow this out and we'll put it back. All right, let's try it again. I didn't like film this part, record the part where it was stuttering, because you've already seen it stutter. Take truck off. I think that did it. Okay, so before I put the fenders back on again, I'm going to take it for a test drive. So we got a little bit more on the float. Just stuck a screwdriver in there and sort of kind of pressed up against the screwdriver to bend the tab a little bit more, and then just a little bit of an opening on the jet. So let's test it out. I don't know what to do. I'm going to try taking the bowl back down again and making another adjustment. It's just I could smell that it's lean. If I smell it's lean, which I'm going to check the plug, it could be fuel. Let's find out. Okay, so you put the throttle all the way up, and that's what it's doing. Is it sucking more fuel than is in there? Maybe. And I can smell it. It smells a little lean. What I see is it's not sooty, okay? It's a little darker. but I've been over choking it, trying to get it to run again and everything. And the choke does seem to be working better. And I actually have to pull the choke off at some point to get it started. But when I revved it up and had it run at full out throttle, it shut down. When we had it idling, it seemed like it was able to keep up. So I'm going to go into the float bowl again and see if I can really make an adjustment upwards one more time. Get some more float, some more fuel in the float bowl, and let's see what happens. And another thing too, it might be, is to reduce the top RPM, because it really doesn't need that much RPM. So let's see what happens. Okay, I wouldn't go much further than this, but you'll see here, as you raise the float bowl up, just about there. Now it should be about parallel. I'm going to move you over to here. It should be about parallel. Of course, we're in the wrong position to really test it, but as I lift it up, okay, now it was quite, it was well below that. And that should be where I should have checked it in the first place, but we're going to leave it at that. And then over here, what we're going to do is we're going to change the spring position. And if you loosen the spring, I think, I got to check its function, but I think if you loosen the spring, it'll lower the RPM. Now, we've got plenty of room. If you look at the angle that it's at, if you pull the spring down on that rack, you're going to most likely increase the RPM. I have to check it, but it looks like we have one more shot. We can go up one on the fulcrum, and that should loosen the spring a little bit. So that's another thing I'm going to try. I don't want to go any further on the jet, okay, on the side hole, wherever it is. On the side, there it is, there. I don't know if you can see it. I'm not going to go any further on that. We're just going to stay like this, and let's give it a shot and see what happens. All right, I just want to do a quick test before I go and eat. And yeah, when you reduce the pull on that spring, you reduce the RPM. You increase the pull on those springs. That's how most of these are. You increase the RPM. So I dropped that spring down one more. All right, we can let it cool down. I'm going to test it one more time. Seemed fine. I think we solved it. And you're going to want to keep a good amount of gas in that. We're going to put the cover back on, let it cool down, test it one more time. Did I just say that? So, I'm going to go eat. Come back out, give it another buzz. Let me get the poop off the lawn so I don't run over dog crap. Christen it. And it's kind of comfortable. It's fast and it turns a little tighter than my Jacobson. Doesn't have a brake really. So we might want to check that, but it works okay. So it's a nice machine. We'll be back in a bit. Okay, last look for today. It's like after 7, so I'm tired. And it's a little tacky, so we're going to leave it. And tomorrow, give it one more test. And then hopefully I can set somebody up with a really fine machine. Okay. And we'll get a look at it in the sun too. Alright guys, we're just going to do a last look. What do you think? She sure is sweet. Somebody's going to get a nice machine. Ride mulch, made in the USA. Alright guys, we're going to sign off here. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a little bit of a long one, but this one was a little bit, I would say this is a little difficult. But it's done, and it's ready to go, and it's a great machine. Catch you again in the next one, guys.